Hello, friends, and welcome into Chat Sports. I am your host, Tom Downey. Now, we know there are quite a few Seahawks fans who watch our NFL daily shows, and as we're always looking to grow and maybe add some more channels as well, we figured, Seahawks fans, why don't we give you guys a shot with a Rumors mailbag, and we'll see how it does. So first up on the mailbag from Waffle Man, is Jadeveon Clowney worth a long-term deal given some of his injury concerns? No surprise, there were a lot of Clowney questions. This one was the most upvoted, so we went with this one. His asking price was and is still too high. That's why no team, including the Seattle Seahawks, has signed Clowney at this point. The market was not what he thought it was going to be. He wanted $20 million. Never came close to that. As for the long-term deal side of it, I actually think a short-term deal makes the most sense, not just for Seattle or a different team, but for Clowney himself. It allows him to re-enter the market next year. I don't think Clowney wanted to settle for a deal below the franchise tag. I think that's what's going to have to happen, though, for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Seattle could still use another edge, and there were quite a few questions on that, including this one on if the Seahawks should sign Everson Griffen. Now, I am curious to see where Clowney and Griffen and all these other players end up going. Remember, Griffen opted out of his contract with the Minnesota Vikings. He is one of the best passers available, and I think he makes a lot of sense for Seattle. If you don't want to meet Clowney's asking price, and you just want a one-year veteran to help buy you some time before Taylor and Collier and maybe even Rasheem Green still are ready to make a bigger impact, I think Griffen makes a ton of sense for you. He's a good player. Yeah, he's older. He's in his mid to early 30s. But he can help you out. He can get you 8 sacks. That's valuable in the NFL. And if you could get him for $8 million, I think that's a pretty good path if you are the Seattle Seahawks. So we'll discuss some more players coming up. But I like the idea of Griffen, especially if they don't want to meet Clowney's asking price. Now, Seahawks fans, I know you're watching. If you want us to start a Seahawks channel, nothing official yet, I want you guys to type me in the comment section. Put it at the pinned comment. Now, if you're not a Seahawks fan and you're still watching, thank you very much. I want you to shout out your favorite team for a future mailbag. We'll do some more team-specific mailbags. Both of these questions are going to be in the pinned comment. So, Seahawks fans, type me. Non-Seahawks fans, hey, shout out your favorite team. See if you can outvote them. Next up from Obama ate my KFC. Weird name, but okay. What are your thoughts on Seattle trading for Yannick Ngakoue? I am open to that idea, and I think Seattle should be as well. Now, on one hand, Yannick's kind of tanked his value a little bit because he has not been a happy camper in Jacksonville. He's made that very clear. And the big reason, dual reason I should say, why he hasn't been traded yet is that A, the Jags have a high asking price, as they should. It's very tough to find players who have 8+ sacks in all 4 of their 8-ish sacks in all 4 of their years when they're still very young and about to hit their prime. Like, there's a reason he's so coveted. He also wants a massive contract extension. That could be an issue for Seattle if they want to pay him. Probably looking at like $20 million plus per year. My question is if the Jags would accept a second-round pick. I would offer that if I'm Seattle. I'm not going to move that first-round pick. That's too valuable. Now, maybe you can work out a condition on second versus first-rounder, probably based on playoff seeding. But Yannick's awesome. 8 sacks, 9.5 sacks, 12 sacks, 8 sacks. There's value in having a young player who's been super consistent and, quite frankly, probably hasn't hit their peak yet. So I would explore it if I were Seattle. I'm not sure they're going to because of the cost involved in the contract and the cost involved in giving up draft capital. So with Seattle, as many of you pointed out, looking for a defensive end, who do you want them to add? Is it Clowney? Is it Griffen? Is it Yannick? Or do you think they're actually fine? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Now, OTT or David had a different idea here. He said, why not both? Do you think the Seahawks' master plan is trading for Ngakoue and then signing Clowney, giving them a top 5 edge rush duo? It'd be fun. Like, that'd be a really, really dynamic duo at defensive end. I don't think that's the case, mainly because, as fun as it is, if that was the master plan, wouldn't they have done that already? Wouldn't they have traded for Yannick during the NFL draft? Wouldn't they have signed Clowney already instead of spending and trading up to go up and get Taylor out of Tennessee. I think it's a fun idea. I just don't think that's really what Seattle's doing. If you could get one of those guys, I think the Seahawks should be pretty happy about where they sit at defensive end, hoping that those young players, Green, Taylor, and Collier, all take a big step forward. From Mason, if Marshawn Lynch returns next season, do you think he'll get more or less touches than Chris Carson? I'll answer that question here in a second. As for Lynch in general, there have been those whispers and rumors that, hey, maybe Lynch does return to the Seattle Seahawks. I honestly don't really see the need. I know that he's beast mode, but he's really not beast mode anymore. You have Chris Carson, Rashaad Penny. You're worried about the injuries there. I get that. You have Travis Homer. You drafted DJ Dallas to potentially be a new third down back for you. If you're worried about Carson and Penny being healthy for week one or both of them, Lynch starts to make more sense. But if both guys are healthy, it's not even a question. It is clearly Chris Carson. Now, I included the playoff stats here to help bump up Marshawn Lynch's games, but yeah, he scored some touchdowns. Guys, Marshawn wasn't good last year, and I feel bad saying that because he's awesome. He's Marshawn Lynch, but 30 carries, 67 yards? Chris Carson truly almost doubled him in yards per carry. You give the ball to the better back, and as plain as day, that is Chris Carson. He is a better running back right now in 2020 than Marshawn Lynch is. I know that he's beast mode. He's just not the same guy that he was in his prime. So, look, if you want to bring him in, have him be some added veteran depth just in case, sure. He's not a guy you want getting the ball 15, 20 times a game. He just doesn't have the same explosion that he once did. Now, Kenny Madison had a trade idea involving a back. He says Rashaad Penny to the Cowboys for a 2021 fourth and a 2021 fifth. So who says no to this trade? I think it's pretty clearly the Cowboys. I think if you're Seattle, with Penny coming off the injury, you'd be selling low. I don't think you could get that much right now for Penny. Now, I think if Penny has a bounce-back year, which I think is very possible, if not probable, well, it starts to make a little bit more sense in terms of maybe getting some value back in a trade. But he hasn't lived up to his first-round hype, his first-round expectations. I don't think the Cowboys will want to do this trade, especially not with Zeke Elliott there. Like, they just spent a fourth-round pick on Tony Pollard. I don't really see any interest there at all from the Cowboys side of it. From Big Boy 54, and there were quite a few offensive line questions here, so we'll dive into more than just if they should pursue Larry Warford. I am open to that idea. I think it does make some sense for Seattle. As a reminder, the Saints cut him because they took Ruiz in round 1 out of Michigan. They're going to move Eric McCoy over to guard, so there's no need anymore for Larry to be on that roster. Now, he reportedly wants about $7 million per year. A little bit tricky, but the Seahawks could make that work if they wanted to. Now, I think the overall Seahawks offensive line, well, it's gotten better. Right around the time Tom Cable left. Interesting. But that offensive line, it still has room for growth and for improvement and just to be a lot better. There were some questions on Brandon Shell getting a new right tackle in there. I think that also makes some sense. I feel good about Dwayne Brown at left tackle. I think you could get and can get by with B.J. Finney at center. That's fine there. I actually like Damian Lewis long-term as a right guard. I think you could start year one. Between Phil Haynes, Mike Iupati, Ethan Pochek, someone can start at left guard. So you could bring in Warford, but that would mean stunting the growth of Lewis. If Lewis struggles in camp preseason, I think Warford makes more sense. If I were the Seahawks, move I would actually make on the offensive line, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call Jason Peters, and I'm going to say, hey, Jason, do you want to come play right tackle for us? Because Shell, he's not great, and Cedric Ogbuehi is absolutely horrible. That's the area I'd be looking if I were the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the offensive line's job, well, it's to protect Russell Wilson. I hope everyone out there is protecting their faces right now with some face masks. Be safe out there so that we can have our sports come back as planned. Seahawks fans, there's a little of a backload right now, but you can get in line right now at chatsports.com/stay safe. They've got Seahawks-themed face masks. And, of course, if you're not a Seahawks fan but you're still watching the show, they got your favorite NFL team as well. I'll put that link in the comments and the description. It's chatsports.com/stay safe. From ATVG JC11 Hanson Goat, very long name. Do you think Seattle could get another corner like Tremaine Johnson, Logan Ryan, or even Darqueze Dennard? I think the premise behind this is that, well, Quinton Dunbar got himself arrested, or at least was arrested. Now, the latest updates and the claims from Dunbar's lawyer is that, oh, he wasn't there at all. He was playing video games when the alleged robbery occurred, and the 5 individuals who accused Dunbar have now recanted in a signed statement to Dunbar's attorney. So they're lying one way or the other here, and that's all kind of confusing. I think for Seattle, you're probably going to try to let this play out and see, okay, well, are we going to have Dunbar or not? If they have Dunbar, I loved the trade. Big upgrade at CB2 spot, one that was desperately needed, by the way. But if they don't have Dunbar, Trey Flowers hasn't been the guy at cornerback too. Is Nico Thorpe the answer? Is Brian Allen going to suddenly emerge, one of those random undrafted free agents? If they are worried about Dunbar, I do think Seattle has to explore the free agent cornerback market. Now, Logan Ryan and Dennard, they're both nickel guys. So if you don't want to play Ugo Amadi there, which is what I would do, but if you don't want to play him there, then yeah, go explore that option. Outside corners, Tremaine Johnson was once pretty darn good. He was bad with the Jets. Eli Apple is he was better with the Saints, not good with the Giants. The name I would actually probably have the most interest in is actually Drake Kirkpatrick. I think he'd be a pretty good fit for what Seattle likes to do on defense. Veteran can come in on a one-year deal and at minimum provide a possible option at the cornerback 2 spot. Worst case, you got a much better option at CB4 than Nico Thorpe. So should Seattle add another corner? Type 1 for yes, they got to go sign somebody, or 0 for no. This Seahawks team is fine. They don't need to have another option. The depth is good to go. Plus, they barely use nickel sets anyway, which, as we'll get into, is true. Next up from Gaming Be Fly, speaking of that, what should the expectations be for Jordyn Brooks this year? I think Brooks is going to start. Now, he's going to be the number 3 linebacker. I don't think he surpasses KJ Wright this year. Obviously, Bobby Wagner's awesome. He's the best linebacker on the team. Wright then becomes linebacker 2. I'll list him as the weak side linebacker. What is unique about Seattle is that no team in the NFL last year, and by a significant margin I'll add too, ran more base defense with their 4-3 and having 3 linebackers out there, which means Jordyn Brooks will get playing time, I think, over Cody Barton, the 3rd-round pick last year, and over Ben Burr-Kirven and the other Griffen, of course, as well. I don't think you're going to see Brooks be on the field very much in sub-packages because he still has issues in coverage, but as a run stopper, it's pretty darn good. I think that fits for what Seattle is expecting out of year 1 from their 1st-round pick. From 10K subs with no vids, weird, but okay. Do you think Russell Wilson is the front runner for MVP going into the season? I think Russ should be a front runner. I'm not sure he's the front runner, though. And I say that just based on the odds, but he should be up there. There's no doubt about that. Wilson has been awesome for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, early on in his career, a little bit more of a game manager, has steadily gotten better and better. And when Seattle lets Wilson throw the football, good things happen. I think they should do more of that. And it's crazy to think that Wilson, despite being a top 3 quarterback right now and has been, I think, for a couple years, he's never gotten a single MVP vote. Let this sink in. Derek Carr has more MVP votes than Russell Wilson. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now, in order to win the MVP, you often have to exceed your expectations. Now, the MVP odds out of Vegas had Wilson 4th behind Dak, Lamar, and Mahomes. I get Mahomes and Lamar. I'm putting Wilson above Dak Prescott, at least on my odds personally. But the odds are inflated because the Cowboys get a bunch of silly bettors, and it's just trying to maximize that potential earnings there. But Wilson should be in the top 3 there. He is worthy of at least MVP consideration because without him, I don't trust the rest of that team, quite simply, especially on offense. So will Wilson win MVP in 2020? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I think if Seattle can win the NFC West, I think it's Wilson's year. Now, crazy enough, a Niners fan snuck behind enemy lines to ask if Tyler Lockett is underrated. But I think he's right. I do think Tyler Lockett is underrated. The efficiency the past 2 years was great in 2018. The volume went up in 2019 with 82 catches. He's played really well. Now, I will be completely honest, I didn't like the extension that they gave him at first. And since then, Lockett has made me look like an idiot, which is good for the Seahawks. Lockett is not often discussed. I don't think even in the top 15, top 20 receivers. I think he should be. He and Wilson have that chemistry, and they work really, really well together. Next up from Ben Crowley, also with a receiver question. How well do you think DK Metcalf will do in his second season? I am very intrigued by it. I loved the DK Metcalf pick. He was my number 1 wide receiver. I have no idea how the NFL let the Seahawks get him at the back end of round 2. And if you can get this production each year, you're really happy with that out of your number 2 receiver. Now, I could see a scenario where maybe just the pure volume goes down a little bit, even though DK will get a little bit better in his route running, get a little bit better in terms of learning how to operate with a full NFL offense. The Seahawks offense isn't as pass-heavy as like the Chiefs is, so the numbers will always be a little bit limited, I think. But I think DK is going to continue to be a very promising young receiver. From Danny Lee, what are the Hawks going to do with LJ Collier because they used a first but only 3 tackles? Collier was, there's no way around it, a major disappointment in year 1. Now, no Clowney, no Ziggy Ansah also allows for the possibility of more chances for Collier this season. What I would do, and I'm curious if Seattle will do this as well, and this is the way I view Collier coming out of TCU, I think he's a defensive end on base down, so when you're in that 4-3 scheme, in third downs, obvious passing situations, I'm going to kick him into defensive tackle. I can pull Poona Ford off the field, and I can roll with Collier and Reed as my defensive tackles. And at his size, his play style, I think that fits very well for Seattle. And I think that might be a way to maximize his abilities right now, get him on the field more, and get production out of your first-round pick. But we'll see what Seattle ends up doing.